learning. Last activity, justice and safety. Hope Miller, Douglas College, Academic Technology Services. Lois Jacobek, Thompson Rivers University, Instructional Design. Move over here.
Brett Griffiths, Vancouver Community College Center for Instructional Development.
Terri Bateman, Instructional Designer, JIRUNSUM.
And then we quiz later on the academic.
Dale Davies, Pullman Polytechnic University with the Center for
Learn the prospect of UDG Agora.
Janine?
Tracy Kelly from East Hampton.
Who are we missing? Oh, yes, Brian.
Brian Fair, BCIT, and official not fire. I went back and
Wonderful job. Did I miss anybody here? Anybody still standing who wants to say who they are? All right. So basically, yesterday, our stewardship committee got together. We do this every year. We get together in person. It's the only time we really get together all in person to talk about what direction we're moving in next year. And this lovely piece of artwork here is one of the things we worked on yesterday, talking about things that are challenges that come to mind, and then some of the themes. And what we're asking you to do is have a look at this during the day and add your own things that you're proud of and challenged by in the themes, because we want you, we work with you to look at the directions for the following year and the workshops that we're delivering. So please feel free to add to that. Behind that is another blank artwork that is yours. So we ask that you look at that and during the day, think about your take-homes from the day. We're going to have a structured part of the morning and then a more unstructured part of the afternoon. We'd like to hear from you what your takeaways are. So please add to that. Pass it back to Kelly now.
Great. Thanks, Emily. And Emily mentioned we had our planning day yesterday for the committee, and for some of us, it's the first time that we've met, even though we've met online. We have monthly meetings and collaborate. We are the educational technology users group, so we use technology to bring ourselves together each month. So it's quite significant because we only get together a couple of times a year face to face, and we have these like crazy planning sessions that lead to all the goodies and activities that become the rest of the year. So a lot of brain power, a lot of creativity, and we invite all of the ideas and creativity from the community as well. So please, as Emily said, we invite you to add your ideas, things that you'd like to see us do, to the blank sheet that Tracy and Brian have prepared. And also just acknowledgement of our graphic facilitators, Tracy Kelly and Jason Toll. Jason's also on our committee, and we haven't introduced him yet.
Where is Jason?
I haven't seen him.
Jason? Not here.
Our wonderful graphic facilitators, so you'll see them likely doing things in the day as well. So, and speaking of the day, we touched on it a little bit. This is a DIY day. The unconference is fairly unstructured, and the structure is really set by you folks. The law of the 2 feet, as they say, and Emily and Janine will tell you more about the unconference a little later in the morning. We do have the pleasure of having a couple of plenaries this morning to lead us off, and we're really excited about that, of having the Agora folks here with us, some of them in person, some of them virtually, and we also have 2 students from UDG who are going to talk to us about. So without further ado, we're going, is Brett, are you? You guys need to think or do a little dance? Okay. Well, maybe one more ado. Okay, one more ado. Okay, no problem. Okay, one thing that we sometimes do at the start of these workshops is Gage is with us today. And it's always great to see new faces in the Etug community. So by show of hands, who's here at Etug Workshop for the first time? Wow. That's awesome. That's great. So for those of you who are new today, we welcome you to the community and welcome you to come back, because it's a great community to connect with. People are very open and willing to share their ideas, their challenges, projects, all kinds of stuff. So for those folks that you see that Emily had stand up and introduce themselves a few minutes ago, our stewardship community folks, if you'd like to connect with someone in the community, just grab onto one of those folks and have a conversation. Okay, so we encourage you to do that. Okay. Literally. Okay, how are you guys doing? All right. Microphones?
Yeah. That's great. Sure.
Oh, there. Okay. All right. I can. Hi.
Hey there.
Oh, you can hear us. Good. Okay.
Yeah, I can. We're having technical issues. Alan's there. He's presenting the slideshow. I don't know if it's showing up right now.
Oh, there he is. Hey,
It's
Alan.
on. Hey, good morning. Good morning, Etug.
Good morning, Alan. I'm going to do my best to do some driving of the multiple screens on one big screen, just so you guys know what's going on. You can. So I may mess up from time to time. So we're doing our best to pull you guys in as much as possible. So bear with us. And yeah, so thank you everybody for joining us to hear us talk about this project, which we quite enjoy, and it's been quite exciting for us also at the JI to be working with University of Guadalajara on essentially what is an 8-month blended, they're calling it diploma in student-centered and online learning, mobile learning. And for us, it's been a faculty development project. We're working with 300 and probably more like 320, I think, professors at the University of Guadalajara in a blended mode with face-to-face, followed by 8 weeks of online, followed by face-to-face. And we're not quite done yet. We're going back in December to complete the last face-to-face section. But our intention today is actually to run this session a little bit like how we were running sessions down there, which we've done our best to sort of be unconventional in our approach to this program for them for a variety of reasons, which we probably will get into. But yeah, I think that's where we can start. So I think what we're going to do first is, I don't know if everybody's familiar with, we're longtime Etuggers here, but I see a lot of new faces. So maybe we'll just do a quick introduction. I'm Tannis Morgan. I'm the Associate Dean of the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Innovation at the Justice Institute of BC. And I've been there for about 5 years. I came from there. I was at BCIT for a couple years before that, and I was also at UDC before that, where actually Brian and I worked together briefly as well.
And I'm Brian Lamb, Director of Innovation, currently at Thompson University, long time at UBC as well, and it's so cool to see so many new people at Etug.
I already introduced myself, but I'm Terri Bateman. I worked at BIU before I was BIU, RMD for about 10 years, and now anybody, I work for
And we also have with us joining us via hangout 2 of our other team members. This isn't a complete team, by the way, but we have Ken Bauer, who actually is located in Guadalajara. Well, let him introduce himself, because he's got an interesting story. So I'm flipping to you, Ken.
Oh, okay, so I guess I'm up. Yeah, I'm Ken Bauer. I'm from Canada. I'm actually from Victoria, so hey, nice weather over there in Vancouver. It's gorgeous here right now. So I've been living in Guadalajara about 20 years. I'm a teacher of computing science at the Tecnológico de Monterrey, which is the largest private university in Latin America, actually. About 100,000 students. And Alan roped me into this whole Agora project, and I'm really, really happy about it. So I'll let Alan switch over.
Okay, I'm jumping to you now.
Okay, I'm here. Good morning, everybody. I was at Etug last year, so I missed being there. I'm Alan Levine. I'm coming to you from my home in Strawberry, Arizona, and this has been easily the best project I've done in a long time. And we've gotten a chance to really meet a fabulous group of educators that you really don't hear much about. And the folks that we worked with in Mexico just really inspired me with their dedication and willingness to try so many new things and not giving up at all.
Thanks, Alan. Maybe since you're on the screen, I can you can jump in and just sort of pull out one sort of surprise or challenge that we experienced with the project.
What? Sorry, I can't. What do you want me to show?
Can you hear me better now?
Barely, but.
Oh, really?
What do you want me to show?
Oh, no. This is that part of the program where we jump in with one sort of key moment. Fireside chat, does that ring a bell?
The veranda, yes.
Veranda, yes, thanks.
We're not doing the slides, huh?
No, we want to watch you, Alan.
Oh, you mean you're putting me on first?
Totally.
You're up, buddy.
I almost said a word I shouldn't have said.
I can move on and let you think it.
And actually, totally not relevant to the project, but one of the best experiences was the night the group of us took Brian and I to Lucha Libre, the Mexican wrestling. And when I told people the next day that I learned all these new words at Lucha Libre, because my Spanish is pretty much como está, buenos dias, and so we did a lot of interesting things with trying to understand each other, because some of the people there did speak Spanish and understand English. Some of us spoke some Spanish, and we did a lot of things with Google Translate, and we made it all work. So kind of that willingness to sort of figure out how to communicate with each other, which obviously is one of the most basic things to doing it, was kind of a hurdle, but it wasn't like a blockage. So for me, like, you know, the willingness for people to be flexible, work around, and I really want to do a shout out to the translators that we had. I had this guy Jorge who was a translator in my session, so he would help me understand the Spanish, and he would translate the Spanish to my English to Spanish for the participants. But he did more than a translate. I mean, he actually had a lot of interest in the things we were doing. So he was actually like another assistant for me in the room when we were doing these hands-on studios with 30 or 40 people trying to learn how to do things on iPads. And so that kind of human element where people were just willing to try and jump in was the most rewarding thing for me.
Great. Anybody else want to jump in?
I'll add that Nancy actually said something. I remember in that last session we did where Brian and Alan gave their talk at the end in the past tense or something. Nancy said she called me a connecting node. And that's what really I got out of this. Is I've been down in Guadalajara for 20 years. I've taught in Canada. And I didn't have this contact with this other university because they're the big public university. And we had a lot of discussions about how things are different between us and them. But we got to a point that a lot of the things we're doing is the same. And I think a lot of you will see, if you get a chance to work with faculty down here in Mexico, you'll see we have a lot of the same problems and a lot of the same solutions. And just seeing how a lot of what we're doing is very similar and we can learn from each other was awesome.
Great. So I'm going to flip back to our studio page here. And then now we can jump in. Terri and Brian, if you have any sort of key moments that jump out at you.
Yeah,
Sure, Terri.
And we'll get into explain actually what we did. What it is.
One of the key things for me being on this project, well, I work alone a lot, so being in this awesome dynamic group of 300 people over 2 weeks, plus just working in a team that's in the same physical space was really great. The big thing for me is I tend to do paralysis by analysis. I will take the problem and turn it upside down and look at it for 12 days. And here it was, hey, you did this yesterday, now go teach it. Yeah, all right. So I had to let go with a lot of that. Are you sure? Yeah, just do it. And it was so great. And the enthusiasm of people there was amazing.
So 2 things I just remember is, first of all, we kind of inherited a technology context. So this was a program where every one of the participants had been given an iPad. And to be frank, I think the key motivator for at least some of the participants was they wanted to keep their iPad. I mean, some were incredibly passionate and just really wanted to make stuff, but there was an element of stick to it. But because we inherited the iPad, I mean, and then we were supposed to be doing a framework where we were doing participatory creation of media. And there is that kind of cheap line that the iPad is really more geared to be a consumption and kind of quick turnaround device, app-driven as opposed to computing-driven. And that is absolutely true. I mean, as we were preparing studios on things like, we said, oh yeah, we'll do a studio on audio production. Well, you can't run Audacity or any comparable tool, but do things like just getting a file and translating a file from one application to another is incredibly challenging. So we came up with some fairly clever workarounds. We tried things like Google Drive to do things weird on its own. We tried Dropbox. We ended up using the WordPress platform a lot, so we could at least upload a file, get a URL, and get to it. Anyway, so if you look through our studios and some of the challenges, you can kind of see some of the specific workarounds or apps we found to do things. But at the same time, I would just have to underline, we definitely push the limits of what an iPad can do as a production platform, and it definitely has its challenges. The other thing I just want to underline was I think a lot of us struggle with the idea of working in the open or taking people out of kind of a closed space online and putting it out in the public. We default to public from minute 1, and they were terrified about things like having to create stuff. They were terrified, a lot of them were terrified of just even turning their devices on. But yeah, some of them, for the first couple of days, there were literally people who walked around with their iPads like sitting in the protective box and we're and we had to actually show someone how to turn it on and off. That was actually one of the. So some people were at that level, others were advanced. But I don't recall anyone ever giving pushback about the fact that all of the materials were in the open, all of the challenges they were in the open, everything they submitted was accessible online. And we pushed a lot of activity onto Twitter. And I don't recall anyone ever pushing back on that. We just kind of presumed it as a condition, and it worked, which was really relevant.
Yeah, that's actually a nice segue, I think, to what this project is all about. And this graphic here, actually, so I'm doing 2 screens, it really sets up the design of the program. So the task that we were given by the University of Guadalajara was, there were a couple of sort of keywords. One of them is that the most memorable line for me is that we didn't want to have, long sort of sessions that talked about Vygotsky and constructivism. We really wanted it to be very applied, very hands-on. They do a lot of faculty development down there, and they felt that a lot of people come out of faculty development and actually don't do anything. They just end and go away, nothing really changes. So that actually set up a really big challenge for us. And that the DI is known for being very applied learning, and that's not unfamiliar to us. So, but having to design something with that in mind is, actually quite challenging. The other fact that was sort of challenging is that they wanted to do this with 300 or so professors of varying ranges of abilities. So there were many people who didn't have to turn on the iPad, and there were going to be people who actually were doing some great things already, and then some people who didn't. So that was a design challenge as well. So we had to keep that in mind. And I'll explain a little bit later how we did that with the challenges. The other thing that, I guess, surprised me as we went through this is all of a sudden on Twitter we saw that the president of the university there was this media coming through on Twitter that the JI was actually picking up, and it was an extremely formal event where people would go and collect their iPads and go on to the stage, the president of the university, and it's a huge university. Well, that's up for later. But there's a very formal sort of process, high-profile process of getting your iPad. And I think that's when I kind of went, wow, this is a really big deal. Like, they obviously got, some funds to do this, and it's really, really important, high-stakes project for them. So we better do a really good job. So that kind of led us to, I guess, a design approach that can be best described as emergent, and I think I put the team members, who, by the way, Nancy White was one of our team members as well, and she's not here, but I would like to mention that, and also Jorge Enriquez, who we'll see on video later. He was one of our University of Guadalajara instructors that we asked to have one from the University of Guadalajara, just to sort of be able to provide some local context to what we're doing and some checks and balances, and Ken also provided that role as well, obviously. So basically, its emergent design approach meant that they wanted this to be highly student-centered, but if you want to be highly student-centered, you can't design everything up. You have to kind of do a lot of design on the fly based on how things roll. So we found ourselves in Guadalajara for 2 weeks teaching and designing every night instead of making, pulling some pretty late nights, just sort of talking a lot about what we needed to do, what was emerging. We were working with an extremely unfamiliar context, and that was basically, I think, the only approach we probably could have taken, because you kind of had to be there to experience it. But at the same time, it was it meant that we worked really hard. The physical space. I mean, we saw the physical space that we're teaching in for 2 days before, testing the technology, that sort of thing. Yeah. So basically, what we are right here at the end of the online part, which was 2 weeks of online activity where they're actually implementing things for their students. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so maybe I can just talk quickly about the role of studios and challenges in design. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to, we didn't really want to have one instructor, 20 students for an entire week. We kind of wanted to mix that up a bit and how, by being student-centered, let them have choices in what they can do and what they can learn. Given the fact that they were all going to be at different levels and different abilities and different kinds of things. So if you can follow along here if you want, but basically what you're looking at is a studio that we've created for Etug. But we designed a whole series of studios, and we ran the face-to-face sessions a bit like conference style, where we would have more studios running than we needed to have, but they could choose. So at the end of the week, they would actually end up with, having done, all the studios except for maybe 2 or 3, because there were more than what they actually needed to fit into the time slot. And we separated these into foundational and learner-selected studios. There were 3 studios that the University of Guadalajara thought were essential. One of them was really around collaborative learning possibilities, because part of this, yes, was mobile learning, but the other part of this was student-centered learning. And of course, mobile learning without any sort of pedagogical framework is just technology. So that was an important studio. And then they wanted people to go away and rethink their courses. So we adopted actually a design thinking approach which was actually kind of inspired by a talk I had when I went up to chat with her. And so there's UBC in this studio. And we had one that really was a foundational studio on the first day, which was about prepping your toolbox, because we realized, people in shop most of them will have never been on Twitter. Twitter was an important tool that we were using as glue. They'll never have turned on an iPad. They were required to download a whole bunch of apps and sign up for a Gmail account before we started the program, but of course there were a few people who didn't do that. So we had a foundational studio for that. And basically studios became our means for getting them to do. We called them studios because they weren't classes, they weren't courses, they were really trying to be inspired by this idea of a hands-on, creative, activity-driven thing. And it's very much an art world kind of thing. It's not unfamiliar there. But really the key to this was that the challenges are really small bits of activity. And basically the idea being that you would do a challenge, so you would have a choice of 3 challenges in a studio, in easy, I'm going to just go to one here actually.
Are we supposed to see different things coming up on the screen?
Oh, jeez.
Good point.
I've been driving on my. Sorry, yes, you are. You're supposed to be seeing lots of things.
So put Alan's up. Put Alan's session up on your screen.
Can you do that again, please? See your waiter.
I said I was not going to do a good job. Here we go. These are learner-selected studios, and then we have the foundational studios here. Okay. Yeah. There you go. So now I'll jump to challenges. Or actually, no, wait. Sorry. Let's go back. I'm going to go to a studio, a learner-selected studio. And within each studio, so they would choose which studio they wanted to do according to the schedule. Every instructor had 2 studios that they created according to their expertise. So Nancy White had liberating structures and visual facilitation. Brian had memes and open resources. Terri had alternative assessments. They had 2 foundational studios, etc. So you get the idea. Each person on the team had their area of expertise, and they ran 2 studios. And these alternated throughout the week. So they had an opportunity to attend, I think, 2 or 3 times at a particular studio. And within a studio would be challenges. And the idea with these challenges was that in the studio they had to complete at least one challenge. In fact, the studio was designed so that you couldn't leave the room and have not been hands-on and done one thing and uploaded it to the challenge bank. So by design, they had to get ready. They couldn't actually just listen and watch a demo and then go away and go, I'll try it later. They actually had to do it in the context of the 1-hour studio. For the most part, these were 1 hour. So the design of this, I mean, you can see it's all online, but for example, Brian had Easy, Medium, Advanced, and this was an example of a studio that somebody new to this could do. So they would click on the challenge after a brief sort of introduction, and it would go to Alan's nicely designed challenge bank, which maybe I'll get him to sort of talk about the technical a bit later. And they would do an activity, and they'd have to complete the challenge by adding a response to whatever the activity was. They had to do this all within the context of the studio. If they were fast and did this really quickly and didn't struggle, then they would go and do another challenge. And basically that's how it works. So by the end of the week, everybody would have completed, I don't even know how many challenges. It would have been, at a minimum, probably.
Well, we had a directory, too, of who had the most challenges completed. And I think at least some of the people were under the impression there was going to be some sort of prize. Because there was an element of competitiveness, and we did nothing to show.
One thing interesting there on that slide that Alan's showing right now is we gave them the ability to create challenges as well with this system.
Yes, sorry, I'm just looking back to you. Yes, it does allow them to create challenges as well. So the idea of this first week was this sort of intense hands-on activity, and everything's online, everything's Creative Commons licensed. So at the end of this experience, we have this identity, which is UDG Agora Online.net, but of course this can shift to, I don't know, javec.theagoraonline.net or whatever. And you see too that as a result of this, there's a lot of responses to this. I mean, 167 responses to this easy challenge. From a variety of professors. It's pretty impressive. So by the end of the week, we have this massive resource of examples which can be used and explored. Having said that, I mean, these are people learning, so some of them are just like whatever, but some of them are quite amazing. So I guess from my perspective, it was a successful design in terms of getting them to do. And by the end of the week, they couldn't feel uncomfortable with their iPad anymore. They had to get in there, they had to do a lot of things. They had to try a lot of different apps. They had to try a lot of student-centered learning strategies, whether that was liberating structures or collaborative learning or whatever. And then that prepared them for the face-to-face part, the online part, which actually is them having to implement a minimum of, I think, did we say 2 challenges?
Yes.
2 or 3 challenges with their students. So they had to create a plan about how they were going to implement a challenge with their students, and then they had to implement it, and then they had to collect and show that they got student feedback on how that challenge went. So they had to sort of have this proof that they actually implemented it with their students. And that feedback could be, students on a video saying, yeah, this worked really well for me, I liked it because it helped my learning, to Twitter feedback, to all kinds of different things, and they're still sort of rolling in. But I think what we're seeing is that actually, at least in my group, I have to say that there's a lot of people have implemented a lot of challenges. Some people did one, a few that did 3 or more, and these challenges can be very small, and they can also be very big. And a big one is an example of people who are redesigning their entire course based on what they learned in the studios. So that's a really quick run through of that. Does anyone want to jump in and say anything?
As we went along, we found the challenges as we were learning what they were learning. We started saying more details, give us more details. This is all going to be all the open colleagues are seeing us, and so we started to try to get as the weeks went by, get more and more information in the challenge, not just what you're going to do, why you're doing it, how you're doing it. So,
there's some there's sort of this design of studios and challenges which were all on WordPress, but then there's also this kind of community glue pieces. So we got them all on Twitter the first day, and Twitter became this kind of glue for activity. It was also a way of sharing what they did as well. But during the online part, actually, we tried this new tool that Alan got us on. So it's a bit of a big experiment called Dilo. Maybe Alan, I don't know if you want to jump in and just talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to flip through things as we talk.
Okay.
But yeah, I've been trying to show screens. I've been trying to guess what you've been showing because we can't see your screen. So I was just trying to match what you're doing. We knew I'm sharing the Dilo screen right now in the Hangout, which you should see. This is Discourse, which is an open source sort of. It's like a discussion forum, but not like the ones that we're all used to. There's a lot of fascinating features, and I've been in Discourse communities as a participant the last couple of years, and it just felt a little bit different. There's a lot of interesting dynamics and ways that they're able to shape it so it's just not threaded conversation. So I was like, let's use Discourse, but I had never run it before. And so the initial setup was a little bit of a bump for me once I figured it out. But I'm really happy with it. So what we're able to do is to have give accounts to everybody in our participants, have them sign up, which is, of course, is the big hurdle. And we create different groupings of information. So Note to See Us is just our announcements, and that's places where we publish things. They can read, but they can't respond. We have the Open Agora, which is kind of the place, it's the largest community. So it's a place where anybody can answer questions and ask each other into the environment. And we had ranges of various participation in there. What we also did is we were able to set up these different groups. So we had these 300 plus participants, but we also wanted them in smaller class size groups. So each of us, except Tannis and Barb, worked together, were facilitators for about 40 people. And so if you were in Tannis and Barb's group, you wouldn't see Alan's group or Terry's group or Ken's group. I only see because I'm an admin. But that means that the only thing that a participant in Terry and Barb's group sees are those first 3 areas. So that's kind of like, not a private, but it's sort of a smaller area for them to have these discussions. So we hope that they would engage in a lot of back and forth discussions. And there's different facilities, so at the bottom of each thing you get some indicators about the amount of activity. This one has 17 replies and 67 views. So Discourse is doing some interesting things in terms of the way it can show information about what's going on in the community. I'm honestly still learning a bit about the way it works. From the back end, you've got a lot of information about what people are doing. So you're able to see who's viewing, who's reading, how much time they're spent reading, and so you can get a pretty good feel on what participants are doing. Each person gets a profile of their activity. I was kind of interested to see which people actually took, the instructions to customize. Like this person has a nice background, they've got their Twitter handle in there, and you can see all the activity that they've done within what we called Dilo, which just the naming was sort of an interesting process. We actually did this live when we were down there. We were saying, what should we call this online community? We didn't want to call it Discourse or Forum. We wanted a Spanish name. And it was actually our colleague Kiko, who works at UDG. We went through a couple iterations, and he said DILO, which means to say it, and it's perfect because it's short for the URL, and it's kind of it's in Spanish, and so DILO became part of a verb of our community.
I should mention too that the online part actually isn't really true online, in the sense that what we did before we left on the last day is we set up a situation where we asked them to work in triads. So we had them become a member of a triad. And the idea of the triad was that because they were their next 8 weeks were really about implementing challenges with their students. That was the primary focus. It wasn't to discuss, grand ideas with us in DILO or anything like that. It was really about making sure that they were actually doing and implementing. But of course, that's a really scary thing for somebody who's just spent a week learning how to turn on an iPad. So we thought that, it's a design approach we use quite a bit at the JI with adult learners, and we thought, well, if we can get them into triads, then we're sort of helping them build community connections with their own people. And it provides a bit more of a local context. It creates something, it takes something that's online to be a bit more face-to-face. There are groups that are regularly meeting and supporting each other. Some triads are actually doing one sort of big challenge, the same challenge all together. So they found very interesting ways of working together, and we're actually going to sort of research this whole idea of the triad with them and see how effective it was for them, because we get a sense that it is. But I think for what it does, though, is it's really shifted our role quite a bit, because we're not as needed. I mean, DILO becomes this place for anybody who sort of needs that place. But it's then become this place where they're sharing with us what they're doing. But really, the design is really for them to be with their triads on the ground in Guadalajara and using each other. And the idea for that, too, is that we're going to go away. And the idea is that, this will continue to grow. They'll continue to work together. It was one of the goals of the university that there'd be more interdisciplinary sharing, less silos, and that sort of thing. So we're hoping that this is sort of setting up, the development of their own communities. But we'll see. I think I'm talking with coaches. Okay. Let's go back to the studio. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting. We haven't talked about the University of Guadalajara itself, and there's we thought it might be kind of fun to do a quick true-false game about the University of Guadalajara. So let's get right in there. True. It does exist, yes. Here we go. So you can just sort of, how about, true is right hand. No arms. Oh, yeah, good idea. I need some help with this here. Okay. True or false? True. Yeah, it's true. Exactly. Is anyone here already familiar with the university? Oh, you are? Okay. Oh, you're going to win this time. We have no prizes. So the UDG has a virtual university as well. True or false? True. False? Who said false? No, it's true, actually. They have a very big virtual university. True or false? True? Yeah, that's true, actually. We actually also have a high school system which has about 140,000 students. So in total, there's over 240,000 students in the entire University of Guadalajara system, which, the best way to think about it is like a Cal State type system. So just to give you an idea of how big they were. It's supposed to trigger the next question here. That's a Roscoe. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Roscoe. He's a very famous painter, Mexican. I'm going to go and say true. This one's actually false. There are 75 murals at the University of Guadalajara. Roscoe is all over Guadalajara, but he did not paint all 75. But he did paint quite a few of them at the university and several other campuses. And they're quite amazing and impressive. True or false? Anybody say false? False. Two truths. True. It's actually false because it's free. It's not an alcohol deal. So they even have some student fees, but they actually have a student aid program for students who can't pay some of the fees. So yes, it's a very large and important university in Mexico that is entirely free for students. So that's it. Good, you guys did great. Yeah.
No.
Sorry?
Oh, that's the university exact.
Yeah, it's a different university. Yeah. Okay, we're here. How much time do we have left here, guys? Oh, geez. We're not going to have time for the meeting thing.
Tacos. Tacos.
Yeah, the taco challenge? Okay, let's do it. So we want to give you guys a bit of an idea. A bit of an idea of what a challenge was. So we're going to actually jump down here. So basically the structure of each studio, as you'll see here, began with a very sort of brief description of what it was. And we started each studio with an opener. And the opener was really designed to be like 5 minutes, 10 minutes max. And then students were supposed to get into the activity right away. Then it was hands-on. So we preloaded it so that there was very little talk, very little demo, very little, look at us kind of idea. And I should mention, too, that we had coaches in every room. So we had about 20 students per studio, but we actually hired University of Guadalajara Young Keen coaches to sort of be a bridge between groups. Because we knew that 1 to 20 for people who were just starting with an iPad or with some of the activities we were asking to do might not be feasible. And then, of course, we were worried about some language issues. So the coaches went around and they were sort of helping out while we were doing this. Oh, the hashtag, yes. If you want to see the kind of activity that we've had since July, hashtag UDG Agora is still, it's very active. And we also had, we borrowed Alan's concept of the daily tries, which actually there was quite a bit of engagement with that as well. So you can see with hashtag UDG Agora, there's also a daily try that comes out pretty much every day. Is that still true, Alan? I'm not sure if I've seen them recently, but we had
We stopped at 140.
Okay, 140 of them. And just to give you some data on that, thanks, Alan, for this, by the way, there was 1,500 daily try responses. So we still do them. Yes, you can still do them exactly. And while I'm on this numbers thing, we had also 9,000 UDG Agora tweets, which is incredible considering Twitter is not a thing in Mexico. So we actually didn't get them on Twitter and sort of introduce all that the first day. And we've since also had 120 of these hashtags that have been created by professors who are using Twitter in the classes. So they might have their own class hashtag and that sort of thing. Which I think I'm so amazed by that. I think that's quite extraordinary for a group of people who Twitter is not really even a thing for them. So interesting that way. So as I jump around here, so we would have them get right to work in the studio, and there'd be examples also that we would provide to sort of be starting points. But again, really brief. They were highly curated. There wasn't supposed to be a big long sort of list. It's supposed to be an easy scrollable page, but then gets them down into a challenge. And the challenge basically is for us today is we're going to do a taco challenge. So if you have the ability to be online right now, that would be great because it's easiest if you're sort of doing this online. But students would then, we would sort of lead them to, okay, do a challenge now. And they would see which ones were easy, medium, or hard. And then they would pick one and they would navigate to it, either in groups or individually. And a lot of this was actually, as a group. And this is pretty much exactly what they would get. They would get an idea of how difficult the challenge was with this rating system, how popular it would have been. And it would be very brief, like this. Here's what it is. This is what you need to do. And then when you're done, go submit your response. and that was pretty much it. Some of them could be done in a couple minutes. Some of them would take 10 minutes or whatever. And should we do this or do we have time?
It'd be Q&A or
Yeah, let's do, I think Q&A is probably, yeah. But
You're welcome to do it on your own.
During the networking, we started
If you're trying to navigate the page, by the way, I created a short link to the Etug Studio page. It's bit.ly/Etug Studio. That studio. If you want
Get that up on the board, Pastor.
What's that?
You write that on the board.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And if you want to, like, if you follow our hashtag for UDG Agora, tweet out to them. They like it.
And you can also create your own challenge, your own helper challenge. So, yes.
Who have access to those answers, like when participants participate?
Everybody. This is completely open. Oh, yeah, completely. So I think I just didn't mention, but a big theme of this design for them was actually open. They wanted that to be a theme as well. So they opened the doors for us to actually ask people to be able to try to do this. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's trying to Mexico Thursday. UDG Agora. Oh, yes, yeah. I think I've got it here. But where's it? Let's see. This is the hashtag, Martin Hoxie hashtag thing. What's going on here? The video. I think we'll just get it up there. Hi, Ken. Hi, Alan.
Yes, what?
Sorry.
We're having a hard time guessing what you're showing to push out on the screen because we can't see the screen or anything.
Right. And what Alan shows goes live to YouTube. So
there you go.
Tricky.
So I had no idea where the quiz was.
Yeah. I was playing it in the studio.
This is a good example of how we operate.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
I just wanted to say that we use some of the challenges for media creation in our latest DIY media learning community at UBC.
Oh, great.
And it's awesome for a couple of reasons. One, often with that community, people come together, and they like being with each other, but when it comes to actually setting up to do anything, it's really difficult. And people don't tend to come forward and jump in and say, hey, let's do this very often. So it was a really great opportunity to have some things right there that people could explore. Somebody did a challenge around looking for OER, somebody did something else, but they were all based on things that they were thinking about or needing to do in their own practice. So it was a really good, easy way to get into something, to try something out, and then to share results face to face. We were going to share them back online, but I wasn't sure if you wanted us to mess with it.
Right. That would have been really cool. Yeah. Well, thanks for that, actually. It's good to know that it's put to use, because the idea of this, too, is that it's transportable. I mean, this is actually not even sitting on the University of Guadalajara servers. It's being hosted by Reclaim hosting right now. But the idea is that you can take an instance and you can paste and borrow as you like and create whatever you want to out of it. So it belongs to University of Guadalajara. It belongs to all of us as well. So so you should feel free to do that. The question of whether they submit into their challenge bank never really came up, actually, but remix, yeah.
We did have instances when we were doing the live stuff where some of the people were observing what we were doing on Twitter, and we didn't have a huge number of it, but we had people from Europe and across North America, India, joining some of the discussions and adding feedback to stuff. Not many people.
Where do I sign up? That was helpful. Yeah.
So there was kind of a quasi virtual dimension to the face-to-face that just kind of emerged. Just a little shout out too. One of the things about the challenge bank structure was that was previously implemented in a digital storytelling course, DS 106, which if anyone's ever heard me speak in the last 10 years, I talk about all the time. And what I think was really cool about DS 106, a lot of people look at that and go, wow, that's such a unique thing it's a kind of yeah, it's cool, but it's completely unique, and it's a Jim Groom, Alan Levine kind of creation, and it doesn't really transfer into other contexts. And at one point, I was showing DS-106 in one of the studios, and one of the people went, "That looks exactly like what you got us doing." And was like, "Well, it's got the same web design that's part of it," which is Alan. But the point being is, although a lot of people like DS-106 is just this purely anarchic, one-of-a-kind, irreproducible kind of thing, we actually did apply a lot of principles from that within a fairly structured design approach and a face-to-face. We didn't have the luxury of it letting it be completely chaotic. We just had too many people and too much. We had to keep some sort of handle on it. So I thought I would kind of think of at least the design approach as an interesting hybrid of kind of the way we had done things in the past and something like DS-106.
Yeah, and I guess, yeah.
This may be a little off topic. I'm wondering why this way, because one of the interesting things about this is, eventually people are walking around the box, and I'm wondering why iPads. People are walking around the box, and it seems like it's again, you raised the concerns early on that I immediately thought of. Closed system, 200,000 potential customers. You're teaching them how to use proprietary software. It's locked down. So while you guys are all open, I'm wondering how you sort of navigated that territory between you and I mean the globally people online and the iPad, and how that came out in the project. Was that University of Guadalajara that did that, and why?
Yeah, that was actually difficult. It was University of Guadalajara, and I mean, I have to say that really, we didn't run a tablet program. Unfortunately, iPads are still probably the best tool to do that. But yeah, it was their decision. I kind of expected that we'd show up and they would have, the lowest common denominator iPad, because that's what we buy, the JI. And they had high-end 4G. They gave people data cards who needed it. They really took care of this whole idea as best as possible about some campuses are better connected than others, and connectivity is important, and that sort of thing. Now, in terms of people's comfort with that whole iPad ecosystem, maybe I'm a little bit more comfortable with it because we've been using tablets for a while at the JI, and we've had to sort of navigate that, although this did open up a lot of, interesting workflow issues and trying to actually design around an iPad. I think we all had varying levels of comfort with the whole idea of iPad and closed silos.
For some of the things that we did, because some people were brand new and I for one for work and I had it for about 8 days, so I was with them. But we made some parts in Canada and had them printed. So this is a big remix on this, right? Open source software, got the card printed, and it was all iPad tips. And so we had to do an icebreaker in one morning with everybody. Take a card, learn the tip, teach somebody else, like it doesn't have that card. And that worked really well. I got people pushing all the buttons.
What about the substance, like the sustained access that this is going to require going forward? And you already mentioned access in terms of 4G networks or via Wi-Fi or whatever. How's the university supporting after January? Going forward the next, say, 5 years, which I'm assuming that they've got some long-term implementation plan. We're kind of keeping this so that we're, so that in 6 years I'm not looking at it and going, well, that was great. That kind of thing, especially again around this idea of proprietary lockdown. No doubt me an iPad Air 5 by then. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's first of all, I think I have to say that we're not dealing with a rinky-dink organization here. We're dealing with a massive university that really, honestly, would make Canada kind of second world. They're putting so much money into their buildings, their education. You go down there and it's like, wow, there's a lot of pretty amazing stuff going on at this university. So I think that's probably, they're very well organized. We worked with their sort of teaching and learning center called SIAP, and they're running stuff all the time. While we were down there, Stephen Downs came down, and Crystal Cabo. They've always got these high-profile people rolling through, doing workshops, courses, whatever. And
it wasn't just about the iPad. Like, they got the iPad as a tool, but the whole focus was on the student-centered mobile learning. Because large percentage of their students have mobile devices. So it wasn't just the iPad itself, but a lot of our stuff is if you don't have electricity at your campus, it doesn't all have to be high tech. There's more principles around the learning as well, and the iPad was just kind of the prize and carrot part.
Yeah, that's very true.
And just to speak to that point a bit, so there's some kind of unintended things that just kind of came out of it just by getting together for a week in an environment where they were pulled into the regular classes and just invited to be creative and do crazy stuff. The word we haven't talked about, enthusiasmo, that was enthusiasm is a Nancy White portmanteau term, and that was kind of our defining thing. And just having that became this huge. But so one of the things I take part of is actually a bunch of people have started course blogs. So a lot of people it has nothing to do with the iPad. We didn't do anything on WordPress when we were there, but a bunch of people have said, we want to get out of Moodle, we want to do our stuff in the open now, and I received multiple emails from participants. A lot of them already in my group saying, look at this thing with our students, and go in the open, and thanks for that. So I think a lot of the value of silly gatherings like this, just getting people out of their routine and inviting them to think differently, that's just that's all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is important. The iPad certainly was the tool we had to work with, but the student-centered piece of it was also very important. Not everything we did really had to even use the iPad, and some of the sessions on collaborative learning were really about, collaborative learning strategies. So, but it definitely was front and center for sure. What Alan's scrolling through right now actually is the next phase, which is this launch? Yes, compartment. So this is the next stage is actually to get everybody who's done their challenges has to pick one, their best one, or whatever, the one that they want to share. And we're going to use the TrueBox tool that Brian's got going at True. And we're going to create a collective resource, an open sort of book of sorts, I guess, of people's implementation that we did. And the idea of this too is that they'll be able to have a bit of tagging structure where they can look by discipline or by type of tool or type of strategy. And we have a kind of a curated resource of hopefully 300 implementations out of 1,000 possibilities. So that's the next stage, and we're excited for that. So again, it's another artifact of this project, and hopefully a resource for people as well.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a video of part of this. Yes, it's short. Yeah. It's so our lovely CF. So basically in this video we have our CF partner from the University of Guadalajara and our instructor from the University of Guadalajara, Kike. Where did I have it? Actually, did I not download it?
I can play it back to the Hangout if you want.
Oh, that'd be great.
Okay.
I did download it, but there we go. This is Kike, and this is Sandra.
I'm showing it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We are so happy to share with you the experience with the Justice Institute of British Columbia.
First, we want to thank all the JIBC team for attending the work with our professors.
It's really exciting to see the happy faces of faculty attending this diploma, interacting with their devices, and most important, building stronger relationships with students and colleagues inside and outside classroom like a very rich network.
We've been learning a lot from our colleagues and instructors from JIBC. One of the really valuable things that we learned is to concrete the ideas, instead of just planning, but doing of the field with our community.
Despite professors already finished their challenges, we love the fact that they are still working on innovative practice that only could be reached with the amazing support from instructors.
Personally, as an instructor, I learned from my students about technologies that I didn't know, which I think is very meaningful and speaks for the student-centered learning that we are trying to develop.
One of the best things about this diploma is that many professors accept the challenge of improving their practices, and they are working in new ways to engage their students and also new devices, not just tablets.
We know that this is just the beginning of a very long and productive relationship between JIBC and University of Guadalajara.
We are glad to send you greetings from Patricia Rosas, Coordinator of Innovative Education.
That was nice. It is the end of that. Yeah, the officialness is very important there. So there's a bit of that coming up. Patricia is the big boss of the University of our project, so she's mentioned in there as she needs to be. Ken, Alan, anything you want to add or say?
Wow, there's so much to add to this. The big thing that I got a lot out of this, because I'm doing a lot of open courses with my students here at the Tec de Monterrey. I basically teach CS1, Computer Science 1. And so my students are all developing in the open. And one thing I learned from this course was this larger group of 300, putting them into these triads, and then into these larger groups of about 30, and then into the large group of 300, and breaking things down and getting people to work together. Because when you throw people into a big pot, a huge community of 300, it's just too scary for a lot of them. So that's one thing I learned from this process as well. One of the many.
Yeah.
You got anything for us, Alan?
I'm tapped out, man. No, honestly, I mean, Brian touched on it. It was a great chance to expand some of the tools that I've gotten to work on in DS106 and then at TRU with Brian last year, and just kind of fleshing them out and improving them, and hopefully putting them in a place where we can reuse them as well. And so the numbers of things that people did are overly impressive, but also the quality.
One thing we didn't mention was we did these weekly hangouts during the 8-week online session. And it was nice because we started at the beginning and it was kind of, okay, how does this DLO thing work? And we spent a lot of time explaining mechanics. The first 2 weeks was basically us. And then slowly we got them to be involved in these hangouts. I don't know if I can even screen share here. Let me see if I can screen share it. I'm not going to show all the videos, but oops, my tab got suspended. My plugin for Chrome, so I don't have things pause. I'm gonna fail here, but oh well, I won't show it because it all fell asleep. Basically, what happened is by the end of the sessions, we had everybody participate in that last week 8 session. We had all 10 slots of Google Hangouts filled, and we actually had to kick people out to let other people in. It just became really, really creative and participatory, and hopefully they continue using this as another tool that they haven't used before. So that was really fun, and we were dreaming about that happening at the beginning, and it did.
Yeah, that was a design approach that we wanted to get to. We wanted it to be so that by the time we go back in December, they're actually running the show. So I don't know. I expect that we probably will be able to get better because it seems like the shift from us to them has really been happening. So that's encouraging, but to be seen still.
Set the birds free.
So Ken and Alan, thanks so much for coming along for the ride, well, both in Guadalajara, but also for today as well. Much appreciated, and I'm a bit challenged by navigating this screen and multiple things, so I'm not sure what the recording is going to look like, but anyways, thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, it sounds like a great time.
On behalf of Etug and Etug, thank you so much for coming and sharing this open project so openly. So that's awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Ken and Alan, too.